Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, the place where we not only talk about what's going on in the gun world, but also how we're going to fix it together. And what I'm about to show you tonight is gun controllers having to do a freaking U-turn because they just got their hand caught in the cookie jar in the Maine situation. This is a development that you're going to want to see, and I promise you're not going to see anywhere else because this right here is the fight every single day. Now, of course, everything will be linked in the description box below. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. And if I land this plane, please let me know down there in the comments field because this is the next spot that they're going. And on a personal note, thank you guys so much for signing up for the letter that we're sending to Speaker Johnson. We reached our goal of 10,000 plus around 700 more people. If you want to jump on that letter encouraging him to support the Second Amendment going forward in his position, there's a link in the description box below. But guys, it's our first letter of many coming, and we broke 10,000 people, and that's amazing, and thank you. All right, my brothers and sisters, so let's get into this because this is why I went so hard right out the gate in response to the gun control, just onslaught of ban everything under the sun, emotional response, visceral reactions, profanity-laden tirades against everyone that would have a Second Amendment supporting bone in their body, because these types of things tend to go real bad real fast when facts are introduced. And what I'm about to show you is how the gun controllers have all of a sudden disappeared because the situation in Maine that we're talking about doesn't fit the narrative anymore. In fact, it's about to do more damage to their push because listen to what's about to happen. The media is asking questions about the difference between yellow flag laws and red flag laws, and this is where it gets real sticky for gun controllers. Check this out. Let's get into this because this is the cutting edge right here. Maine mass shooting puts spotlight on complex array of gun laws and a series of massive failures. Again, everything is linked, and we know that because we've been hitting on it. But let me show you what they're starting to question here. Portland, Maine. Across the nation, much of the debate around gun rights and restrictions centers on mental health. Completely agree. Many advocates on both sides agree that getting people with serious mental illness into treatment and then preventing those who are dangerous from accessing guns is key to preventing mass shootings. I think that's agreed across the board as well. That's what you guys can tell me down there, but I think that would be agreed to. Yet, and this is where it steers off. Yet, in the weeks and months before the mass shooting in Lewiston, there were so many red flags that people all around the killer were raising concerns to authorities. He was still able to do it and shatter the community's sense of security. That's the point. Every gun control law on the books failed. The yellow flag laws failed. The commitment failed. The Army failed. Sheriffs failed. And you want to take guns. Why don't you just take the people who failed since they're the ones that failed, not the inanimate object? Anyway, we're getting to my point here. I'm going to show you the yellow to red. This is important. In a text early on September 15th, 1 month before this tragedy, one of Card's fellow reservists urged a superior to change the passcode to the gate and be armed if Card arrived at the Army Reserve Drill Center in Saco. Or Saco, I don't know how to pronounce it. The reservist said Card refused to get help for his mental illness, and yes, he still has all of his weapons. Quote, I believe he's going to snap and do a mass shooting, the reservist wrote. Now does it make sense why all the gun controllers have faded off into the distance onto the next tirade? Why Shannon Watts is blaming ARs in Illinois for showing up to a Halloween party when they're already against the bans there anyway? Gabby Gifford is doing the exact same thing. All of a sudden, Maine doesn't exist anymore. Isn't that weird? It took about 5 days and a couple inconvenient facts. Now, this is where it's going to start getting really uncomfortable because they start contrasting yellow to red flag laws in these articles, and even the people in Maine are going, yeah, no, the red flag laws are a bunch of crap. In Massachusetts, you do worse than we do on this. Really, check this out. What's the difference between yellow and red flag gun laws? Now, keep in mind, the distinction here is important because it shows you what they're truly after. Maine has what's known as a yellow flag law, the only kind in its nation. It was enacted in 2022, and it was founded by Republicans in the Senate. By contrast, Massachusetts, one of the toughest gun laws in the nation, has a red flag law. They wanted to know the difference, and under Massachusetts red flag law, any relative or roommate who suspects a gun owner is an immediate violent threat can apply for an emergency court order. If a judge approves the order, the gun owner must temporarily surrender their gun license and their guns, and they can appeal the order to get their guns back. So you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. That's Massachusetts. But the senator in Maine is about to unload some cannons here. Check this out. Maine's so-called yellow flag law has a few extra steps in the middle. Someone who suspects a gun owner is an imminent threat, whether that can be a close relative or a police officer, can report them to the police. Then it's up to local law enforcement to take that person into protective custody, order a mental health evaluation from a medical expert, and if the doctor and police deem necessary, apply for a court order to get guns temporarily taken away. Then, and only then, can a court order temporarily suspend a gun license or remove guns. You see that distinction? The yellow flag laws are closer to due process than the red flag laws are. Red flag laws are no guns for anybody if we deem that you don't need to have them temporarily, but you can prove yourself perfectly fine, you can have them back. Maine, in the yellow flags, this is where it gets into it. Well, you got to go to a doctor. You have to go to the police. The doctor and the police both have to agree you're a danger to yourself, and then you can appeal the process. This is where the gun controllers are going to go off the rails, because while they are pushing for red flag laws in Maine, you have to answer the question of what's the difference between yellow and red flag laws. This is where it falls apart for them. And they are going to struggle because the only difference between these two is in one scenario, you have protection of your rights to a minimum degree, and in the other, it's anybody and everybody. If you have to start explaining the difference between red and yellow, like they're going to try to do when they push red flag laws, they're going to get in trouble with anybody in the middle because the mask slips. It is obvious what they are trying to do. If you already have a yellow flag law in place, why do you want to move to red when there's less due process and no guaranteed outcomes? In fact, the senator from Maine, listen to what she says. The yellow flag law in Maine has been used 82 times since it was launched in 2020. That, Senator Keem says, is evidence that the law is working. Quote, absolutely working well, she said. I think if you compare your numbers in Massachusetts, how often has your red flag been used effectively? Based on your population versus ours, based on your population versus how often our yellow flag law has been used effectively based on our population. I believe you would see that it has been used more effectively here in Maine, saying that yellow flag laws are more effective than red. Meanwhile, all the gun control groups are pounding the drum for red flag laws. Here's the actual data. This is the yellow flag law applications for the last 4 years in Maine, a total of 82. Let's go over to Massachusetts, where they're trying to duplicate the same thing in Maine, the gun controllers are. 57, with a dramatically larger population. This is the entire point. The second that you start splitting hairs with detail with gun controllers, they start falling apart because they can't back any of their claims up with data and with detail. It's got to be broad, it's got to be emotional, and it has to be very, I've already said broad, but it's got to be extremely broad in application and execution. That's the point. If they get into details, just like always, they start to fall apart, as I said. Now, this last piece, this is where the entire thing just shows you for exactly what it is from Moms Man Action Volunteer. Still, gun control advocates like Margaret Groban from the Maine Gun Safety Coalition say a red flag law is a better model. Quote, we are the only state in the country that has yellow, and I would say that we are an outlier, not a model. The yellow places way too many burdens on stealing your rights. Burdens on stealing your rights. That's the unacceptable piece here. I'm telling you, the mask slips when they get into the details. If the goal is to get firearms quickly out of the hands of people who are dangerous, yellow is not the way to go, she said. Is the goal to get firearms quickly out of the hands of those that are deemed dangerous, or the goal to respect rights and balance public safety from a standpoint of mentally defective or criminality? That's the entire point here. They are letting every mask, every piece of their facade slip, because now they're having to split the difference between red and yellow flag laws, and the media is making them do it because they opened their mouths and got too emotional. And that's what I've got for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you on the next one. I'm Braden. See you later.